This episode is sponsored by JDAQA Software Testing, your scalable solution for manual, automated, security, and performance testing. Check us out at jdaqa.com. And with that, let's get on with the show.
This is The First Customer, hosted by Jay Agnew.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the First Customer Podcast. My name is Jay Agnew. Today, I am lucky enough to be joined by Jon Wise. He is the CEO and founder of JWC out of Philadelphia, right? Is that right, Jon?
Yes, it is.
You're in Philly. You're Mr. Philly right now. You're in the fitness club.
Yeah, exactly.
You're in the heart of where things are going on. How are you, man?
I'm great. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. I've seen you around a bunch of places. We finally got to talk and meet up, which was very cool. Tell me, where did you grow up? And did that have an impact on you being an entrepreneur later in life?
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, deep suburban Atlanta. I like to joke that it's like where Atlanta fades into Georgia. So it's kind of that crossover there, a tricky balance. Yeah, and I grew up in a pretty entrepreneurial environment, I'd say. Both my parents started their own businesses and had their own endeavors. So I think I didn't grow up my early childhood didn't grow up in a world where people had normal 9-to-5s and that kind of thing. So I think that definitely helped influence how I saw, what my career could look like. I never thought of it that way, but looking back, I'm sure that had an impact.
What kind of businesses did they run?
We'll focus on my dad. He ran a software business. So back in the day, when people were buggied around on horseback, people would buy software for their computers on like floppy disks, and you had to go to a software store. So he ran a local software store in Tucker, Georgia, and so he had a big warehouse. I think they must have had a catalog or something. I don't exactly know what the setup was, but they shipped a lot of merchandise. So they had a pretty big warehouse in the back. I guess it was probably like 6,000 square feet, 10,000 square feet of warehouse, and then like a small storefront. So there must have been some kind of not online, but some kind of ordering system. Like, I don't know. So yeah, so it was a software business, computer games.
I'm sure he's still there selling software today, right?
No, definitely not.
My kids have no idea what a floppy disk is, or I guess some of my kids know what a CD is at least, but the younger ones have no idea what any of that stuff is.
Yeah, my kids, one time my ex and I were cleaning out a trunk that we had in the living room, or maybe one of the kids were just digging through it, and they found a VHS tape, and they held it up by the corners. And what is it? They were afraid to even it felt like
touch it. You can't touch. No. You want to get your finger grease on the very delicate VHS tape.
Oh, that was so funny. He's like, what is this?
My mom actually brought me one when I was on vacation like a month ago, and she's like, "Here's your VHS." I'm like, "Mom, what am I going to do with this? Like, I don't have you're giving me homework. Like, I don't want homework. I don't have to take this home and find some way to convert it to digital format." So what was next? You grew up in Georgia, and then what? Did you jump right into starting businesses? Did you have any kind of childhood exposure to starting businesses, or did you wait till you got older?
It's funny we're talking about that because I was ruminating on this, because it's the First Customer podcast. So I was thinking about, well, actually the first customer was this software store was in Tucker, Georgia, which is like a suburb of Atlanta, like I said. And they had like a festival day, like Tucker Days, and where all the people that owned a shop in Tucker would have a stand, and they'd shut down the streets and people walk around, and it's kind of farmer's market. You know what it is. And so I guess my dad's software store had a stand, and I decided that I was going to have a stand next to that stand. And this is kind of a little bit of family lore because I don't have a ton of memories of this, but behind my dad's shop was an empty lot. And I just collected rocks out of that lot and sold Tucker rocks, Tucker Days. And the joke is that I sold more than they sold at the actual store. But it's just a funny idea, I guess, as a kid, selling rocks, Tucker rocks, to people that live in Tucker. And these are the same rocks that they could find in their yard, but they're buying them from me. So yeah, I think that's my first sale ever were these Tucker rocks, I guess. So the
hustling at an early age.
I guess
at an early age. I love that. So what was next? Obviously we're marching towards JWC here, but what were kind of some of the major milestones to, in your entrepreneurial journey? Obviously you were selling rocks next to your dad's floppy disk stand, which is like such a funny sentence in general. But what was kind of next towards your journey?
So yeah, went to college in Boston, went to music school and had a great time there. And then got involved in like the music industry and was recording and producing and delivering sandwiches and nothing glamorous, just kind of a combination of paying the bills and doing what I loved. And ended up getting into event production and then started freelancing for agencies. So it's kind of getting us closer.
Mhm.
And through the process of freelancing for agencies and creative direction and filming and that kind of stuff, my Instagram feed really blew up. And so blew up like in 2012 standards, nothing compared
Mhm.
to what it is now.
Right.
And just like my aesthetic, I was surprised that it did as well as it did. And I kept getting on the Discover page on Instagram, which was kind of fun. So back then, everyone had the same Discover page on the whole platform. So I kept landing on the Discover page. And I remember one day I got a DM from someone that claimed to be the VP of global marketing at Ralph Lauren. And she had been following me and she's like, "Oh, I've been following your journey and loving seeing your account blow up and love your aesthetic. We at Ralph Lauren are launching a new brand soon, and we'd love for you to come in and freelance as a creative director and shoot for the brand book that we're doing for
Mm.
this new store this new kind of store that we want to open." And I remember I showed it to my partner at the time and was like, "Which one of our friends is messing with us? Like this
Right.
can't be."
Right.
And I did not have a LinkedIn. Neither of us had a LinkedIn. So she's like, "Well, let me look them up and see if they're real." So I think she got a LinkedIn account, or you could see, I guess, without having an account. She's like, "No, this is who she says she is." And I remember I'd never heard of anybody like landing a gig on social media before. This is, 2012,
Right.
2013,
Yeah. Yeah.
2010. And I just like laid down on the floor in the living room because I couldn't like to get like like an international, multinational, brand like that to reach out directly was just incredible. So
So
yeah, so that was kind of fun. So that was another kind of first for me. It was like a first social sell, which is kind of cool. I
I
mean,
love that.
that happens every day now. We both do that in our sleep now, but back then I had never heard of it at least. So it was kind of a fun first for me.
One of our first clients, obviously not Ralph Lauren or comparable, but Chris Sarah's company, ArcWeb. I knew Mike Balzerzak, who was one of their lead like UX design artist guys, and he reached out through Instagram. Was like, "Hey man, you still doing that QA thing?" And like that was like one of our like it was man, I had to go buy a suit to go pitch at Chris's office down when he had his office, and now he's at Fitler near you. But yeah, so social media is still a way to make it happen. So what's next? How do we get to JWC?
Okay, we're gonna hop, skip, and jump a little bit because I have a very
Sure.
long and winding story. But as my Instagram was blowing up, I ended up starting a video production company, video production agency. So we focused on content strategies and execution. So we would produce the content we helped brands strategize around. I think we were pretty early in that. We called it a video content agency,
Hmm.
and at the time, I couldn't find another person that went by that. Now it's a little bit more common. And we thought kind of holistically about creating batches of content and distributing it across multiple channels, which at the time, video companies were trying to sell like one video at a time at a
Hmm.
premium. And I was like, let's take a step back and think about let's buy a 3-day production and try to create 50 pieces of content from that, which is kind of unique at the time. Now it's kind of how everybody thinks about content, which makes a lot more sense to me. I had a pandemic pivot because you can't really film a lot in the pandemic when you're locked inside. And I was itching to get into full service marketing. So yeah, ended up starting a firm in DC. It was a full service agency for B2B tech firms, B2B tech like SaaS and tech enabled services. Had a great time doing that, built a great team. That team did some really incredible work in a really short amount of time, which is fun. Ended up exiting that agency and then started my own firm, JWC, in 2023. So that's how we got to where we are.
And who was the first customer? How did you
Okay.
start it? How did
All
you
right.
start it?
So the first customer, I thought that I wasn't sure exactly what it was going to be. So I started JWC as kind of a place to put some consulting gigs that were coming in. But I had an old contact come through and asked me from my video days and asked me to fix a video for him that he had another firm produce. And he just really wasn't happy with the way it turned out. They didn't really kind of understand the problem that they were trying to solve with the video and the production. So we recorded a new VO and created a new script, recorded a new VO, swapped out some clips. And I was talking to him, I was like, "Hey, what's your go-to-market strategy? Like because it was this life science SaaS platform. I was like, hey, what's your go-to-market strategy? What are you doing for content creation? What's, this website's pretty rough. Like, what are we doing here? What's the plan? He's like, oh, you do all those things? I was like, absolutely. So I was able to kind of pitch him on what it would look like to work together. And we've been working together ever since. That was about 2 years ago. And we launched a whole go-to-market strategy, a beautiful new brand, an incredible website, and generated really a ton of opportunity and a lot of noise in a pretty like strange and niche industry for him. And we've been just thrilled with those results. And it's an ongoing relationship. We just had lunch the other day. So it's kind of fun to see that go all the way from like, hey, help me fix this little video to let's work together for 2 years and launch this brand from scratch.
I love that. What made you go Jon Wise Creative? If you go to your website, you see a picture of you, right? How do you think about and position personal brand versus your company? Because you're very obviously intertwined in what the brand of JWC is. How do you kind of mix those two things together?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I've always struggled with personal brand and trying to figure out like how do I sell what I do? So my other two agencies were, had a name and it was not related to me necessarily. And so I decided with this one to really lean in on the personal brand because I think people know me and they buy from me, and I'm really good in like a sales meeting, and I can build rapport, I think, really quickly with a lead, and a contact, and really understand their needs. And so let's cut out this idea of a brand so much and really focus on the idea of like leading with the personal brand. So I think that was a big growth for me personally, because I was previously like really uncomfortable with that in the past, but had finally, I think, gotten old enough and like not care enough about like, being nervous about how people would feel about that to just lean in on it. I think we've also seen a big shift in personal branding in the marketplace where people are leading with their personal brand, even if they have a company name. I think of like Alex Hormozy, who is the face of acquisition.com as their family office, and they have a portfolio of companies and offer a wide variety of services. He's done an amazing job of leading with personal brand, even as the main driver of the actual brand, which doesn't even share his name. Yeah, so it's an interesting shift to see in the industry. And I don't have to have brand attributes as much as and like come up with a brand. The brand is who I am, and how I like to show up in a relationship, a business relationship, are the attributes of the company. And that's it is a reflection of me. So it's a little bit easier of a branding process as well. But it's such a blind spot, I think, for most founders to really lead with personal brand, because they're normally they're really good at something, and they're normally pretty uncomfortable with like the feelings of like self-promotion. So for me, I think it was just a lean in moment and try to lean into that discomfort and get over it and see what happens. The worst that happens is it doesn't work. And I have a couple other name ideas that we could have gone with. And I was like, well, let's start with JWC and see what we can do. If it doesn't get traction, then we can always pull back and launch one of the other names.
I like that. Yeah, I guess the question to that is, and you pointed out, like so many people have that problem, me included, you included, a bunch of my agency owner friends included. I do think it's a very important thing to get over, right? Like you said, like eventually you're just like, for whatever reason, there's these like moments in life where like it's your diet or it's your workout routine or it's the way you do whatever. And you're just like, now I'm going to do it different, and you do it different and it changes and things are great. Is there anything you could suggest to somebody who's afraid of the personal branding side of things, or maybe they're embarrassed or they're worried about, I don't know what people think? Like, what is it? Like, how does somebody get over that and just start, trying to be a thought leader or trying to be, themselves a little more in public, as opposed to like being the man behind the curtain, which, as we know, and like you said, it helps a lot when you're selling stuff. Like people want to buy. I mean, it's an old tired cliche at this point, but like people buy from people. Like they don't buy from companies. So like, what are some like at least one suggestion that you would give somebody to like kind of kick them out of that, shell that they're in, to not get out there and personal brand?
Yeah, I don't know about you, but we're probably a similar age, but I'm trying to like live the rest of my life with as few regrets as possible. And every time I look back at a past chapter, I wish I had pushed harder on being myself and putting myself out there and just stop caring what other people think. Cause they probably don't even, the thing I'm worried about, isn't even on their radar. Like it's completely in my head. Like there's an audience of naysayers in my head that doesn't actually exist in real life.
Right. And
The
everybody's
worst.
thinking the same thing. Everybody's worrying about themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. No one's going to remember if I wear this shirt on Tuesday and then again on Thursday. Like literally, and if they do, like that's the shirt I'm wearing today. Like
Right.
people aren't even noticing that kind of stuff. And people do know me as a person, people know you as a person. So like lean in on the fact that people buy from relationships. They don't necessarily buy from brands. And the amount of work it takes to put that kind of value, like a lifetime's worth of work value into your brand is enormous. But if I attach my name, my personal name with what I'm doing professionally, then it's a very short walk to get there and kind of be like, oh, I know John. I had dinner with him the other day. I didn't realize he's in marketing. I
Mm-hmm.
need some marketing help, or my friend needs some marketing help. Let me just get them connected.
Yeah.
It's a very short walk instead of like, oh, John started this thing and it's called, gadgets, and gadgets does this stuff. And like, we've got to create this whole brand story around gadgets. And, like that's just, there's nothing wrong with that at all. And that's such a normal path to go. But when you're starting something new and you're small, especially you're in services, you don't have a product, like just get over it.
Right. Yeah. I think people like think that they need to create this mystique around what they're doing, like behind this brand. And to your
Sure.
point, like especially if you're selling services, like it couldn't
Yeah,
be more personal when you're a small services company. Like people are only buying from you. Like they're not. There's
absolutely.
no system in place that they're like buying from this big machine. They're buying from you. So I love that point. It's a really great point. So if you started over again today, and I know it's only been about a year, I think, since JWC 2023, if you start over again today, would you do anything different?
Um, that's a great question. If I started over again today, I would shore up my personal brand's messaging a little bit more. So I think as we do that all the time for clients, like brand messaging, market positioning, and I was really focused on our first couple customers, making sure they had a great experience. So now we're backfilling with a little bit more of our own market positioning and clarifying that. That's one answer. I think here's a better answer than that. If I had one thing to do over from the start, is I would start selling sooner. Start proactively selling sooner. I'd build that email list. I would start producing content. I would do all those things. I waited for about a year, actually a year and change, before I started actually promoting what we did, because I wanted to work on the process. And I think I was being a little too precious with making sure that we had an incredible internal process which created great results. I'm not ashamed that we have great results, but I think, just get selling and solve it along the way.
How do smaller shops with less budget compete with other companies with a massive marketing budget in the same space and maybe in the same city or general region? Like, how do they do that? Can they do that? Do they go another way? Like, is there a way to be super effective with a small budget compared to a big budget? Like, how would you tell somebody to approach that, knowing that they had a smaller budget compared to their big competitor?
We solve this problem with our clients all the time. They are small, they are not funded. One of our clients, is up against a Google funded SaaS solution, and they've got hundreds of millions of dollars. And our client does not have hundreds of millions of dollars at all. They have, a few $100,000. And so how do we do that? And I think the first thing I always tell people is like to niche down, and then go white glove. So, because the thing you do have is time. The thing you can do is care more. The thing you can't
Love
do
that.
is you can't spend more than them, and your product probably isn't going to hit as hard as their product does. But you can solve a more niche problem, and you can make sure they have a great experience and they build a relationship with you directly or your team directly. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, niche down and white glove up. Those are the two things that we normally focus on with our clients that are in the David and Goliath situation.
Makes a lot of sense. All right, I got one more question for you. Non-business related. If you could do anything on earth and you knew you wouldn't fail, what would it be?
If I could do anything on earth and I knew I wouldn't fail, I've always wanted to drive to the tip of South America.
Never heard that before, and I love that answer.
I think that
That
would be an incredible road trip to do. And I've looked into it. It's very perilous. There's a lot that can go wrong. and you were very far from help at some different, very key junctures. So I don't know if I'm ever going to make that trip, but I would
Well, you couldn't
absolutely.
fail. You couldn't fail. So you could, in this scenario, you could make it. Did you see that guy who ran the whole length of Africa?
I've seen the guy who ran the length of Africa. I've seen the guy who did the motorcycle to the bottom of South America. That was cool. I
Or
think he
not
did
South
like,
America. Sorry, you said South America, not Africa. South America. Okay.
South America.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. No, the runner guy was Africa, I think. Right. I
Yes,
think
it was Africa. Totally.
which
I
seems even
can't.
more terrifying, like with all
Oh,
the
100%.
political stuff and all the
Yeah.
like no, thank you.
Civil wars, people running around with machetes and machine guns, and yeah, it's
And like
just
mix in some lions and like other weird shit that you're gonna see along the way. I'm good on that.
wildlife aside. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's wild. All right. Well, I hope you get to make your drive one day. Wait, from here? Is that what you're saying? Like you want to drive from here to the tip of South America?
Ideally, I would start in like Nova Scotia or somewhere pretty far
Oh, like
north.
way far up.
Yeah,
All right.
I want to do the whole thing.
That's pretty cool. All right.
Yeah.
That's one of the more unique answers I've ever heard. I love that. I've never actually heard that before. I usually get like, go to space, all this other kind of, but yours, that's a great answer. I love that. All right.
I have zero desire to go to space.
You don't want to go to space? All right. Even if you couldn't fail? All right. Well, it's to each their own. If people want to find you, Jon, how do they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. They can look me up on LinkedIn. I've got a fun newsletter there that I do called From the Desk of Jon Wise. They can check that out. They can go to Jon Wise Creative. And then we also have an accelerated offering called Brand Camp. They can go to letsgotobrandcamp.com for smaller businesses.
Beautiful. Any events coming up for you? Are you doing CapCon or anything in Philly?
Yeah, we're doing CapCon, the Mid-Atlantic Capital Conference. People can find us at Health in Vegas in October, HLTH.com. Yeah, we'll be around. And especially in the Philadelphia stuff, we're at all the networking events there as well. So got the whole team coming.
All right, man. Well, you're fantastic. I appreciate you being on. I'll see you down at the Fiddler sometime soon, I'm sure. And other than that, enjoy the rest of your week, all right?
You as well.
Thanks, Jon. See you, buddy.